Chapter 2: Thinking Like an Economist. Recall the subject of economics. It is a social science that studies how society manages its scarce resources. The economists, whose profession in this subject field, try to address with a scientist's objectivity. Like all scientists out there, they make appropriate assumptions and build simplified models to understand the world around them. They devise theories, collect data, and analyze the data, whether to verify or refute their theories. Let me introduce you to some famous economists out there in the history and current time, such as Adam Smith, the founder of classical economics, John Maynard Keynes, the founder of Keynesian theory, Milton Friedman, the monetarist, John Taylor, the one who invented the Taylor's rule in addressing interest rate stance, Ben Bernanke, the former Fed chairman who rescued the US economy in the Great Recession of 2008-2009, and some others. Economists follow the scientific method. They pay close attention to the natural experiments offered by history. To do so, they make assumptions to make the world easy to understand. Then they gather the data and put in laboratory experiments. For example, to understand international trade, it may be helpful to start out assuming that there are only two countries in the world producing only two goods. And then they extend the analysis to a greater number of countries and goods. Again, the goal of a model is to simplify reality to increase our understanding. So the models that economists use are composed of diagrams and equations. First, let us consider the equation presentation. Now look at the demand equation. QD equals to 100 minus 2P. This can tell us the quantity demanded and price that they have a linear negative relationship because of the negative sign in the equation. The extent of relationship depends on the coefficient or slope in front of the P, whereas the supply equation QS equals to 100 plus 2P can tell us a linear positive relationship between the quantity supplied and price. Again, with this equation, the extent and direction of relationship depend on the coefficient or slope in front of P. Second, the economists use the diagrams to convey the visual presentation so that the reader can simply digest their understanding quickly. The most common presentation is a two-dimensional graph. There is no 3D or 4D graph in economics, as you see in other physical science fields like physics. Now let us consider the simple model of the economy. Here we ignore the roles of government and international trade. There are two decision makers in the model, firms and households. There are two markets, the market for goods and services and the market for factors of production. Households are the buyers in the market for goods and services, and they are the sellers in the market for factors of production. On the other hand, firms are the sellers in the market for goods and services, and they are the buyers in the market for factors of production. Here, I would like you to know that factors of production that run any business structure are simplified as land, labor, and capital. And K here, we represent capital because we endorse the work of the economist Karl Marx. Now let us look at the circular flow that represents the simple model of the economy that was mentioned earlier. The inner or red loop represents the flows of inputs and outputs between households and firms. The outer or green loop represents the flows of dollars between households and firms. This is how the channel works between the two economic agents, households and firms, that operate the two markets for goods and services and factors of production. In addition, I would like to convey that returns of factors of production are wage for labor, rent for land, and profit for capital. Now, I would like us to consider the production possibilities frontier, or PPF, which is the combinations of output that the economy can possibly produce given the available factors, productions, and technology. The PPF is graphed such that there are two productions, computer on the vertical axis and car on the horizontal axis. The PPF is a downward sloping graph. Having looked at it, the PPF is actually the opportunity cost of producing a good. So it means that if you produce more cars, you have to cut down producing computers. Consider point A and point B, such that at point A, the economy can produce 2,200 computers and 600 cars, while at point B, this economy can produce 700 cars, but it has to sacrifice the reduction of computer to fall to 2,000. Another important indication of the PPF that I would like to acknowledge you guys is that any point on the PPF is the most efficient production choice, such as point F, A, B, and E. However, a point that sits on the left by the PPF border, in this case it's point D, it represents the inefficient point. Why point D is inefficient? Because consider this. If they decide to produce computers at 1,000 quantities, then if they use all their resources efficiently, they should produce cars up to 900 quantities, not 300 quantities, as we see. So here we can say that this economy at point D is inefficient, whereas a point that sits on the right or out of the PPF border, in this case it's point C, it represents the infeasible point. Why is it infeasible? If you plot the coordinate of point C, then you see that it sits on 500 cars and 3,100 computers. In such case, this economy can produce cars at 500 quantities, but they cannot produce computers at 3,100 quantities. Because this economy can produce only computers at the maximum level of 3,000 quantities. As such, we can call point C is infeasible. The PPF can be upgraded or downgraded depending on the availability of technology adoption. As seen in the graph, the economy of car and computer productions, we can see that the PPF is expanded to the right, which is representing an upgrade, such that computer production can be produced at a greater quantity while car production remains the same. Let us compare point A and point G. At point A, with the original PPF, the economy can produce 2,200 quantities of computer and 600 quantities of car. With the expansion of the PPF at point G, the economy can produce up to 2,300 quantities of computer and 650 quantities of car. Why and what can make the PPF to be expanded? And that is the sole reason is due to technological advancement. Technology is the main reason to push the PPF to shift forward. As such, we can say that technology advancement can bring up economic growth such that the economy can produce more of both goods as said in the PPF. Here, I would like to step aside to show you the relationship that you will later see when we discuss some economics topics. Consider the fx function representing the upper graph. Look at the change at point A to point B. If you take the difference of fx, it is 8 minus 6 equals to 2. And if you take the difference of x, it is 6 minus 4 equals to 2. The notation of delta means that a change in. Recall the formula of slope, and it is the difference of fx over the difference of x. And here it is 2 divided by 2, which equals to 1. So the slope is 1 and it is constant. The fx function is upward because you look at it from left to right, you will see it's going up. After all, we can say that fx is an upward linear. Now let us consider the gx function in the lower graph. Look at the change of point C to point D. If you take the difference of gx, it is negative 4 minus negative 2. So it equals to negative 2. And if you take the difference of x, it is 6 minus 4 equals to 2. The slope in here is the difference of gx over the difference of x. So it is negative 2 over 2, which equals to negative 1. So the slope is negative 1 and it is constant. Let me remind that if you keep doing the same process at any point on the gx function line, you will get the slope at negative 1. And it is the same for fx function when we see it earlier. Now, if you look at the trend of gx function from left to right, you will see that it's going down. So we can say that gx is a downward linear. So after all, both fx and gx functions represent a linear relationship that they have a constant rate of change because the slope is constant. How about we take on when fx is curved? Consider the change of point A to point B. If you take the difference of fx, it is negative 38 minus negative 18. So it equals to negative 20. And if you take the difference of x, it is 6 minus 4 equals to 2. So when you calculate the slope, it is negative 20 divided by 2 equals to negative 10. Now consider the change of point B to point C. If you take the difference of fx, it is negative 62 minus negative 38, and it equals to negative 24. And if you take the difference of x, it is 8 minus 6 equals to 2. So the slope is negative 24 divided by 2 equals to negative 12. Here, the slope keeps increasing if you keep moving down near the horizontal axis. And the shape of fx is outward from the vertex of the axis. So we can call fx is concave with increasing rate. Now let us consider gx when it is curved. Look at the change of point D to point E. If you take the difference of gx, it is 38 minus 62 equals to negative 24. And if you take the difference of x, it is negative 6 minus negative 8 equals to 2. Then the slope is negative 24 divided by 2 equals to negative 12. Now consider at a change of point E to point F. If you take the difference of gx, it is 18 minus 38 equals to negative 20. And if you take the difference of x, it is negative 4 minus negative 6 equals to 2. So the slope is negative 20 divided by 2 equals to negative 10. Here we can say that the slope keeps decreasing if you keep moving down near the horizontal axis. The shape of gx is inward from the vertex of the axis. So here we say that gx is convex with decreasing rate. Now we come back to the subject of economics. Since economics is a broad skill that looks up many aspects in the economy, it is rather to view it at two different scopes, microeconomics versus macroeconomics. In microeconomics, the focus sits on the study of how households and firms make decisions and how they interact in the markets. There is a discussion about household utility maximization functions as well as firms' profits maximization function. that point to the field of microeconomics. Whereas in macroeconomics, the scope is on the study of economy-wide phenomena, including inflation, unemployment, and economic growth. You will come across topics that discuss about GDP, nominal versus real term, inflation, interest rate, and unemployment rate. Let me remind that microeconomics and macroeconomics are closely intertwined because changes in the overall economy arise from the decisions of individual households and firms. Because microeconomics and macroeconomics address different questions, each field has its own sets of models, which are often taught in separate courses. Here, let me tell you a story. Do you know why tech companies hire economists? Here's the answer. 1. High-tech firms are hiring economists because economists have the analytical and technical skills to help design efficient markets. 2. Economists are willing to move from government and academic positions to high-tech firms because of the promise of big data sets and big salaries. How about economists as policy advisor? We discussed this as positive statement versus normative statement. Positive statement or descriptive attempts to describe the world as it is. The economists who believe in this statement, they confirm or refute the claim by looking at data as evidence. Whereas normative statement or prescriptive attempts to prescribe how the world should be. The economists following in this belief express the claim by looking at the fact, but they also take ethics, religious belief, and political philosophy to consider. Now let us take the quiz. Question number 1. An economic model is what? As discussed earlier, the economists who profession in the subject field of economics, they try to address the topic issue such that they make appropriate assumptions and build simplified models to understand the world around them. So here the answer is C. An economic model is a simplified representation of some aspect of the economy. Question number 2. A point inside the production possibilities frontier is what? When discussing the PPF, we say that the point that sits inside or leftward to the PPF border is inefficient. Given in answer choices, B is the correct one. Feasible, but not efficient. Question number 3. Most economists believe that tariffs are what? Tariffs in general are the contractionary tool to pull down the economy to run forward because it stops market activities by restricting economic agents such that the households and businesses to fully operate their capacity and resources. So the answer is C. Tariffs are a poor way to raise general economic well-being. Question number 4. Classify each of the following topics as relating to microeconomics or macroeconomics. A. A family's decision about how much income to save. This is related to the household's welfare. So it is microeconomics. B. The effect of government regulations on auto emissions. This is related to the firm's level in respect to their operations. So it is microeconomics. C. The impact of higher national saving on economic growth. This is the national saving rate. So if you look at the household level, if the household restrict their consumption but save instead, the market will fall out because businesses will lose their profit and hence reduce labor force. This is happening in the Japanese economy such that they encounter high saving rate and the economy has been struggled for a few decades. Since this is affecting many aspects of the economy, it is a macroeconomics topic. D. A firm's decision about how many workers to hire. This one is related to the firm level, again, whether they look at to operate the business that matters to their profit objective. So it is a microeconomics topic. E. The relationship between the inflation rate and changes in the quantity of money. When you hear inflation, it is impacting multiple aspects in the economy because inflation is a general price level increase, such that everyone in the economy has to go through and live with increasing in many prices of the items in the economy. In addition, the quantity of money here refers to the money in circulation that runs through the overall economy. So the statement is a microeconomics topic. Question number 5. Use the production possibilities frontier to illustrate society trade-off between two goods, a clean environment and the quantity of industrial output. Show what happens to the frontier if engineers develop a new way of producing electricity that emits fewer pollutants. Here, you can just plot down the 2D graph, one of which is the cleanness of the environment that you put it on the vertical axis, and the quantity of industrial output on the horizontal axis. Then you can draw a downward curve that represents the inverse relationship between the two items. We understand that industrial output produced by factories can cause harmful to the environment, such that carbon dioxide or greenhouse gas emissions is the topic that is going on discussion in the climate change as a result of industrial output. The more production output by the industrial sector, the more environment is to face up with negative impacts, and it goes the other way around too. If we rather want clean environment, we have to sacrifice for a low level of industrial output. However, at the instance that there is a technology advancement such that the engineers can develop a new way of producing electricity that emits fewer pollutants, we can draw an outward curve from the original PPF. It's an example of the PPF expansion or upgrade. And it is a good thing that we have clean environment while we still keep producing the same level of industrial outputs.